Hello, everyone, and welcome to our Learn webinar, Just Breathe, exploring the relationship between air quality and absenteeism. My name is Dr. Jeannie Haubert. I'm the Executive Director here at Learn. Learn's professional development offerings are tailored specifically to education leaders, and they aim to help members navigate current challenges and enrich their professional lives. So we strongly encourage you to sign up for our quarterly newsletter and to stay up to date with the latest Learn webinars, podcasts, and research insights. To do that, go to our website at golearntoday.org and click on the Join tab to plug into our network. So the goal of today's webinar is to really help district leaders understand why indoor air quality matters academically, financially, operationally, and explore a little bit about what the research says about the connection between absenteeism and student and staff outcomes, hear a story or two about how this matters, and also think through kind of which interventions are practical, cost-effective, and certainly high impact. So I want to begin by extending a warm welcome to our esteemed panelists for today. Andrew Dobson is the owner of 19 ServPro franchise licenses. ServPro is a national organization that specializes in cleanup and restoration following an emergency event, such as a fire or a flood. Andrew is a biohazard expert and consistently ranked among the top 100 ServPro representatives nationwide. He's attained the rank of Triple Master Restorer with IICRC and serves as a certified instructor for the organization. Dr. Alvarez, Jennifer Bassett Alvarez, serves as a district level pre-K program coordinator with experience in instructional support, professional learning, program implementation, and data-driven continuous improvement. She earned her doctorate from Sam Houston State University, and her work focuses on strengthening pre-K systems, supporting developmentally appropriate instruction, and improving early literacy outcomes through campus collaboration, family engagement, and teacher support. Jennifer Keegan is the Vice President of the Learn Board of Directors. For her day job, she is in the Building and Roofing Science team at GAF. GAF is North America's largest roofing manufacturer. So she leads a team of building scientists, innovative educators, and industry collaborators with a passion for complex problem solving, knowledge transfer, and best practices. Thank you all for joining us. I'm happy to have you here today. I said this in our research advisory board meeting. Indoor air quality is not one of the things as an educator I ever thought I would be talking about or leading a webinar on, but I think it is really important when we start to understand that it is not just a facilities issue, but rather an instructional issue, a staffing issue, an attendance issue, right? And we know that absenteeism has downstream effects affecting funding, academic outcomes, staffing stability, and the confidence of our families in our schools. So I think that, it's really important to think about balancing those urgent, visible needs with invisible infrastructure risk as well, which is kind of what we're addressing here. So today's goal is really to just gain some practical insights. So I'm going to start with Dr. Alvarez and wanted to ask you kind of why this topic is of interest to you. And maybe you could talk also a little bit about which student populations you think are kind of most vulnerable to air quality issues.
Absolutely. This topic is really important for me because, as I am in and out of the classrooms, I want to make sure that we're doing everything we can to serve our students in public education, private education, and whatever education that we are working to serve, right? My personal entrance in this topic has to do with some personal experiences that I've had with indoor quality working in a public education environment. And so that's led me to, wanted to research a little bit more about this topic. I personally think that this populations that are most vulnerable are going to be our youngest learners, the littles. They are very young. Their immune systems aren't, fully um, uh, fully planned out quite yet, as well as students with already existing health issues like asthma, allergies, chronic respiratory issues, any chronic health issues, any disabilities, and also just looking at some of the research, the students from the low income communities may be more at risk from, being more vulnerable to having some poor air quality. So for me, it's really important that we discuss these kinds of things because we know that it is a current issue or a challenge in our education system. But there is a entity that has researched the effects and impacts of indoor air quality on illness. And these were some of the things that they brought up, the attention, difficulties, concentration, and cognitive performance being a factor that we should consider when we're discussing air quality.
Good. Yeah. Thank you for bringing that up. So good point. And one of the things I remember from when we had our research advisory board meeting about this was just kind of a simple statistical connection where multiple studies, I would say we looked at 10 different studies, 70% of those studies said that there is a relationship between indoor air quality and absenteeism, a strong relationship between those things. And then there was, I think, one maybe. I'm sorry, it's 80%. One maybe and one no, one study that didn't find it. So a pretty strong consensus that it does matter. And one statistic that stuck out to me was that by improving indoor air quality, districts could reduce absenteeism by 5 to 6 days. So so definitely worth a conversation about, right? Thank you very much. So I'm going to flip over to Jennifer Keegan here for a second, and wanted to check in with you about. Um, I know that you deal in not just school buildings, but buildings generally, and wanted to see what do you think are some of the most common hidden environmental problems that you encounter in your work?
So, thanks. That's a great question. And I really see two really big players here.
Okay.
One is air and one is water.
Okay.
So, as an enclosure consultant, our goal is to keep the outside environment outside and the interior environment inside. And when we start getting communication of these two, is where we're creating a breeding ground for problems and scenarios where if
Interesting.
it's not addressed, we may in the future need to bring somebody like Andrew into the conversation. So we want to really mitigate air leakage in a building so that way we're preventing this communication of air. But air's not visible, right? And so this can be happening for years and it goes unnoticed, undetected, unless you know the symptoms to be looking for. And so when it comes to air leakage, the challenge with air is air can bring water with it, carries moisture with it. And it does, if this warm, moist air reaches a cold surface, that's where we start getting condensation. And condensation can show up as a perception of being a leak. Or it can just be a nuisance. And so when I walk into a building, especially a school building, and I see those little, they call them pigtails along the windows, right? Those little moisture containing socks, right? They're kind of soaking up all the moisture on the windowsill. To me,
Mhm.
that's a red flag for, okay, there's something more going on here. When I look up and I see the stains on the ceiling tile, why are we ignoring that? Or we sometimes get to see some like really creative solutions that the maintenance staff will put in place because they don't maybe have the budget to address it, or they think it's maybe not a big problem. And so we'll either see little pans that are collecting water. We'll even see gutters diverting it elsewhere to get it out of the building. I've seen some really creative solutions. When I start seeing things like that, I'm like, whoa, Houston, we've got a problem. Let's really start looking into this. So for me, if I'm a district leader and I walk into my buildings, if you see stained ceiling tiles, if you see water collection creativity devices, trash cans in the middle of the hallway during a rainstorm, any of these things, um, and if you see staining along a windowsill, or you see those devices that are there to soak up moisture that happens in those areas. These are red flags, and these are those early warning signs to really start paying attention and start asking some questions.
Good. Yeah. Thank you for saying that. I think the early warning signs is really interesting, like really important for us to be paying attention to. And so I'm thinking about like, and this can be really for anybody on the panel who wants to jump in, like, um, why does that matter in terms of kids' health, right? Like if I'm trying to prioritize my budget, um, obviously like I want to fix that water issue, but what might be kind of the downstream consequences of not dealing with water issues or air issues in your classroom in terms of the kids?
I'm going to tee this up for Andrew
Yeah.
because he's going to be on the extreme side of this. But when I have moisture in a scenario, it's that is one of the key ingredients to breed biological growth in mold. It also helps me start breaking down materials, and so I'm really impacting the integrity of the systems they have in the school. And when we're have these feeding grounds for biological growth in mold, that's where we start getting the health impacts that Dr. Alvarez was talking about.
Yeah.
And so I'm going to turn this over to Andrew because this is really his specialty, his area of expertise.
Great.
Yeah, I mean, what she was saying is absolutely correct, and what she sees all the time on her side, the drips in the pan, I call them creative water diversionary strategies, right? To make sure that the water doesn't hit all the building materials, just some of them, okay? And we call that creative mitigation, but in the same token, we're ignoring the genesis of the problem. And so, for example, if you have a roof leak, you may have a pinhole roof leak, but you have more than that, is you have a chink in the armor now, right? And every time you have that pinhole leak in the roof, every time the wind hits it or you have another thunderstorm, it's going to continue to aggravate that envelope. And then eventually what you get is someone like me showing up because you have not just a pinhole anymore, but a gushing amount of water coming into your facility and affecting your building materials. And why is that an important problem? Well, it's because really what we're concerned about is microbial growth and not just, say, mold. Mold is always top of mind because it's really, of all the microorganisms in microbial growth, mold is the one that we can physically see colonize. So it's the most sensationalized. But actually, bacteria and viral microbiology pose just a similar threat to mold if water is left unattended. And it's a combination of the three things that these kinds of microorganisms grow in. First, they need a water source, right? Then they need a food source, which is in the sugar that's found in building materials such as drywall, insulation, what have you. And then they also need an incubation period or some evidence of stagnant air, right? Is really where we're going to see that in nature. We're going to see that in the deep woods. We're going to see that in the caves. And so the goal for us is to eliminate those variables one at a time, right? And so if you do have an episode, I'll let Jennifer speak to the prevention aspect more. But if you do have an episode, my job is to make sure you take immediate corrective action to reverse the problem, right? We want to make sure we're preventing that phase as much as we can. But if you do have a water episode, the key thing is a rapid drying mechanism to correct the moisture equilibrium of the building. because you don't want it to allow that incubation period so that mold takes hold on the building materials of your facility. So, not every disaster is preventable, but proper prevention systems can prevent a lot of disasters from occurring. So,
Mhm.
what we try and do is after we leave, we'll talk about modes of failure in the building. And I'm sure some of these are going to be overlapping in the same space, but modes of failure like pipe breaks and roof leaks and foundational leaks and all those things. They always start, they can start small and then get bigger to the point where you need to take emergency action. Now, the simple prevention procedures that Jennifer can talk about, those are going to be the least expensive, right? The emergency cleanup procedures is a step above that, right? It's going to be more expensive than proper because you still have to take the proper prevention procedures after the emergency service is complete. But now you're adding that extra cost on, my extra cost on top of that. If we do what I call the big daddy move, right, where we take the newspaper and we're covering up the mess, right? You then go into another phase after that, which is now you're trying to do biological remediation. At that point, you have very stringent protocols to make sure that you're remediating microbiological growth uh, correctly and that it does not come back. Because once it hits that growth phase, it's very hard to remediate. It's not impossible, but it is very costly. And so we all want to make sure that we're preventing that phase because all of the say cost cutting in the world, all of the corner cutting eventually leads to a cost that's way more than the first two could actually remedy. So
Good. Yeah. Thank you for that expertise. I really appreciate that. It talking about kind of mold and mold remediation got me remembering a teacher I was talking to last summer, and her child had missed an entire semester of school and might be out for more because he developed and I'm not saying this for like scare tactics, but he developed something called PANS. It's pediatric acute onset neuropsychiatric syndrome. Yeah, I had to think about what that was. But so she was telling me about it. I hadn't heard about it before. Apparently, like it's on the rise. And so I was researching it a little bit and was seeing that there are some connections to environmental toxins, to mold, that sort of thing too. And so was her theory that it was connected to mold in the schools because they had been finding mold in various places within the school. Now, that's just one case, but my point is her child was very, very sick, right? And so sick that he was unable to go to school. And those are the types of things that we're trying to kind of prevent here, right? Catch it before it becomes that level of a problem, right?
As a more extreme example of that,
Sure.
um, when uh, when I was living on the West Coast as an enclosure consultant, I went into a university education building, and they were having a lot of water leaks in the building, and they were hiring us to perform an investigation to figure out where the leaks were coming from and how they would repair them. And so as we were walking the building to do our planning, and we'd walk into rooms to say, okay, are we going to kind of do some exploratory opening here, or what are we seeing, where are the symptoms in the building? Um, we quickly realized that I was the canary in the coal mine because I have such severe allergies. And so if I walked into a room and within a minute or two I started wheezing and coughing, they were like, oh, okay, we're definitely going to open in this room. There's something going on. And it was amazing to me how, like, instantly I was personally affected. And so I realized that we all needed to have full respirators to be doing just an investigation to figure out what was going on in these buildings. And so you can imagine the students, especially the littles, right, Dr. Alvarez, who are more vulnerable than my fully mature lungs were at that time,
Sure.
and the instant impact that it was having.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Dr. Alvarez, was it you in our meeting who was talking about the growing the teachers who grew
Yes.
mold in petri dishes. Do you want to tell that story real quick?
Yes, I was actually just getting ready to chime in because I
Good.
was I was talking to our board about a personal experience I had. A couple of years back, I was working in a school, wonderful school, but it was an older building, and so with older buildings comes a lot of more problems, right? And so the room that I worked in had visible mold, and so like we would, they did everything they could. They got maintenance out there. Maintenance would clean it up, but you guys know if you don't get to the source of mold, it's going to continue to grow back, which it did. So I ended up having to purchase like a $200 air filtration system for that room, which immediately improved. But before then, before I realized that it was an issue, I have asthma, I had breathing issues, constant allergies. I was absent quite a bit. And so thankfully, kids weren't in that classroom very often, but can you imagine what would happen if kids were in that classroom? If I was sick as much as I was, and I went to work because I didn't want to take my days off. But the littles, especially when we're talking about chronic absenteeism, we see that most in like high school and pre-K.
Sure.
Our kids are out so much. And so in what we found when we were talking within our research advisory board team, it was that it's mainly due to health issues. And so, that was a real big aha moment for me is like, wow, if teachers want to be able to breathe easy in an older building, they're going to have to purchase their own air quality system or air
Yeah.
filtration system, which is not really fair.
Right.
So it's
And
like, what can we
it's a
do?
Band-Aid, right?
Yes, it's a band-aid. Like, what can we do to actually get to the root of the problem and solve it in our schools?
Sure. Yeah. My husband's a teacher who also purchased with his own money an air filtration system for his classroom because he was didn't want to be sick all the time, right? Um and and so yeah, thinking about all right, where can we kind of invest dollars so that it's not kind of just plugging holes? I think matters a lot. And here's the thing, like superintendents don't need a perfect building tomorrow. That's maybe unrealistic, but they do need to know where investments matter most, right? So I'm going to toss this back to Jennifer and to Andrew. I'll start with Jennifer, but like what do you think are some of the most, we understand that these are tight budget times for K-12 right now. So what do you think are some of the most cost-effective either assessment tools or strategies for healthy buildings?
This is such a great question, and I was really excited to see you're going to ask this.
Okay.
The most cost-effective assessment or strategy for from my perspective here
Yeah.
is in relationships, and it's going to cost you $0. So, as a superintendent, build relationships with the manufacturer and the contractor of your roof specifically, because that is what's protecting your entire building and is going to, it's the largest footprint. It's going to have a significant impact on the performance of your building. And also your enclosure, right? And most likely your the HVAC system in your room. If you can build those three relationships, this will pay dividends. I can tell you for a fact that we will, for zero cost, come out every year and walk your building with you. We will walk that roof and say, hey, let's talk about the maintenance that needs to happen. Let's talk about, I mean, I've seen some crazy stuff on roofs. I've seen forks stuck into the roof membrane. Okay, that's instant leak right there. I've seen arrows from archery class. We've seen drains completely filled up with balls and pencils and all the things. Like each one of these. So now my drains are going to back up, right? And where's that water going to go? That is going to find its way into your building. So maintenance is maintenance that your staff can do very easily, and we are happy to come out and walk that roof with you, and we'll identify areas that are going to need some quick repairs, and usually that can be done fairly straightforward, pretty easily, and it might even be at zero cost to you if it's, depending on the scope of it and depending on the relationship you've built with that firm. So that is my number one strategy for you, is relationships, relationships, relationships. And then just dedicate it, put it on the calendar every year, whether it's before school starts, whether it's at the end of the school year, you find a time that works for you and just commit to doing that every year. That will pay you huge, huge dividends.
Sure. And right. And having kind of a relationship where there's trust involved too, right? Because I'm thinking about like, this is a silly analogy, but I've needed a new air conditioner for a while in my house, right? And every time they come out to fix it, I definitely need a new one, et cetera, until I bought, I don't know, a home warranty where I wasn't paying out of pocket anymore, and now all of a sudden I don't need a new one, right? And my point is, my point
Interesting.
is that I think it's hard to distinguish if you're not an expert in this field. Like, how do I distinguish between, okay, this is really a cosmetic concern, or this is a genuine risk that I need to be concerned about? And so I think if you've built a relationship with someone or with an organization that they're not just trying to upsell you constantly, I think that matters. I don't know, is there something you could direct district leaders to be able to weigh some of that for themselves, whether something is a cosmetic concern or an actual risk?
So a great tool is focusing on air and water infiltration, is an IR scan. And I'm going to premise it by saying there are AI apps that you could use your phone and just kind of scan things. And I'm going to suggest that maybe utilize somebody who actually can understand and interpret an IR scan appropriately. But there is a science to it. There's a an understanding that comes along with that technology. But by doing an IR scan of my roof, of the walls within a classroom, I can detect heat. It can also help me detect moisture, can help me detect air leakage, air movement. And so that's a really great diagnosis tool for if I see some of these symptoms going on. An IR scan can really help with the diagnosis to really help understand, give me a range of where the repair might fall, the proactive repair, as opposed to waiting until somebody like Andrew needs to come in and we're dealing with something a bit more aggressive and a bit more urgent.
More of an emergency situation, right?
Correct.
Okay, good. Yeah, thank you. Andrew, from your perspective, any examples of kind of low cost prevention strategies that you would suggest?
Jennifer hit the nail right on the head, which is relationships, relationships, relationships. And then also put them into a schedule that coincides with the time of year where your mode of failure is deemed high risk, right? So, for example, if you're getting ready to go into a cold season, now, Texas does not always have freezes, but they have had freezes before, and we have handled those in the past. However, but if you're getting ready to go into a cold season, that's the time to make sure that your HVAC system is performing as it should, right? Both heat and cold, right? I know some Texans neglect their heat sometimes because they're like, when am I going to need this? Well, when you have a freeze is when you're going to need it, right? So the biggest thing I always say is that as you're going through your year, you want to inspect these things before the season that they're going to be needed. So, for example, if you're going into a cold season, you want to have not only your ducts cleaned, right, before you have them inspected, but you want to have a certified HVAC, HVAC repairman go over the system itself to make sure that it's in good working condition, it's absent of any corrosive components on it that's going to lead to the mode of failure that ultimately leads to moisture intrusion. So, um, for me, as the person walking in after a major disaster, what I'll tell you is it's the simplest things that end up leading to catastrophic results. When we go into, say, flood season, right? Everyone has a sub pump in their basement if they have a basement, right? But everyone has a sub pump in their basement. However, after they have gone through, say, a dry period, that sub pump has not been working very often, and so sometimes the float switch, the switch that turns on the sub pump when moisture is coming in, it simply gets stuck because this has been sitting inactive for a period of, say, 3 or 4 months. And even though the sub pump is fine, right? A little bit of maintenance, that little jiggle on the switch would have prevented, say, a ten to $15,000 water damage situation. So,
Wow.
those are the simple maintenance things. I've been to HVAC system failures where their HVAC system was serviced, but they forgot to change the battery in their thermostat, right? That simple mode of failure can end up leading to catastrophic results, right? So, what I say is a good system schedule, right? That's conducive to the season that you're going into to make sure the whole system is functioning as it should. That's the best thing you can do for your school and for the children inside of it.
Yeah, that's great advice. And especially since we have, superintendents from all over the country, it's going to be very contextual, right? The weather and the seasons and the emergencies that you're facing are going to be different in different places. So having those relationships already in place and a maintenance schedule matters. Do you ever see cheap fixes that cause problems later?
Yeah, the just the looking and jiggling of the float switch on the sub pump is the
Right,
cheapest thing you can do, and it's
right.
free, right? It's you're checking to see if it works, right? So sometimes just dumping a bucket into your sub pump crock to see if it pumps out. Those are little things you can do, or just lift the float switch up to check to see if the
Sure.
pump is actually functioning, right? So we want to make sure that that thing turns on. Also,
Right.
like I said, the plumbing checks, drain checks. Jennifer talked about an IR scan, and that's what we do in building moisture inspections all the time. We use an infrared camera to detect heat variations, not just for building envelope concerns, but hidden trapped moisture, right? Because as water evaporates, it has a cooling effect. So sometimes those show up on a building moisture scan pretty readily. So those simple walkthroughs, those simple inspections can usually find small problems that lead to big problems. And we want to, and I think if me and Jennifer agree on one thing, we want to eliminate the small problems before you have to see someone like me.
Right. Good. I'm thinking about kind of Dr. Alvarez's experience of bringing in her own air filtration system, right? Um, Obviously, we'd probably recommend that there be a more system-wide sort of thing, right? That districts put in place that filter the air throughout the entire school, not just kind of room to room. Um, do those tend to be expensive? Is that something that people do? I mean, I imagine a lot of folks upgraded during COVID, right? And so maybe they're thinking like they're done now, like they've upgraded their filtration systems. Any recommendations for folks who might be like, well, this is an issue we've already addressed?
Here's what I'll say about air filtration systems is that that's the next level in my mind, right? And I would say you start with controlling the environment of the school. So in Dr. Alvarez's situation, she had a mold situation that was not being taken care of. So she took a, let's say, Big Daddy approach, putting in the newspaper. The goal was to keep mold spores in the air to a minimum, right? And so what she took the approach is I'm going to buy a filtration system, and that accomplished what she set out to accomplish, right? However, you still have the growth occurring behind the wall in the drywall that can continue to recontaminate those areas. So I like to focus on the source of that issue so that once you remove the source, and I would say not that it's not needed anymore, right? Because that's still that next level. All of my
Sure.
kids, no mold in their bedrooms, and they all have air filters, right? So I am definitely going to that next level for my kids all the time.
Right.
But that being said, that next level is less of a an emergency if you're handling the problem at its source.
Okay. That's really helpful.
And
Thank you.
the only other thing I'd layer onto that, I also have the air filtration in my bedroom regularly. clean and change that filter, because otherwise it's not going to be effective
It could
anymore.
be the opposite, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
So that maintenance becomes super critical.
Got it. Yeah, that's a good recommendation. Thank you. Um, Dr. Alvarez, I was thinking about, it's funny because Jennifer Keegan is saying like we're trying to keep the outside outside and the inside inside, right? But also like there's some good research on just taking kids outside as health benefits too, right? And so even just getting outside of the building. Jennifer Alvarez, do you have any insights on that, like outdoor learning or increasing time outside?
Well, definitely, especially in early childhood, anywhere from pre-K to two. Beyond that, outdoor learning and play, the research suggests that the time outdoors supports children's physical, emotional, social, cognitive development. So like when students are outside, they have like direct contact with the sun, like, just different factors that they can't get inside. And if you want to think about it, put it in perspective, how much time our students are spending indoors and in general, if there is no time for them to have that learning and play outdoor learning time, it's you know it can it doesn't work out so well, right?
Sure.
They
Yeah.
need some kind of interaction with the outdoors, especially now when we have so much technology and students are like just glazed to the screen. We see that in research too, that's impacting our students. So that we definitely need to make sure that we're holistically supporting the development of our students, including the physical and emotional development of our students.
Yeah, absolutely. I think we need nature, right? We
Yeah,
need immersion in it. And you're talking about some of those behavioral issues as well. And there's some good research out there too that shows that with the kind of spike in ADHD and anxiety and all of those things that we're seeing more and more of with our kids, that just being out in nature is a good mitigating effect for that, right? That
absolutely.
it is improving attention, improving focus, uh, reducing stress, reducing anxiety. And so I think really making sure that we're thinking about um, kind of the nature needs of our kids. And so when we can take kids outside, doing it as much as we can. Good. So just wrapping up here, this is kind of for everyone, whoever wants to jump in, you can all answer or however. But I just wanted to ask, like, what do you think is one thing? It can be either your take home message or one thing that every superintendent should start doing tomorrow, right? We want the Monday morning, I'm going to do this suggestion for folks. Any ideas?
I'll jump in. I would say find out who your roof manufacturer and your HVAC manufacturer are, call them, and walk your building with them. And if you are unsure about what they're sharing with you and their recommendations, there's an organization called IBEC, and they have third party enclosure consultants that you could find across the country that have certifications that could lead you in the right direction. And so, Jeannie, you can share that contact information as well at the end.
Go. Good. Anybody else?
Yeah, so just to go piggyback off Jennifer, one of the things we do as the Serpro franchise as well is we actually offer emergency ready profiles for buildings, and it's an absolutely free service that we provide when we do things, which we do exactly what Jennifer talked about, which is walk the building with preferred contractors. It doesn't always have to be contractors that we work with because some people are more familiar with your building than others, but sometimes it's getting them all on the same page. And so what we do is get them kind of all together in this kind of emergency ready profile.
Mm.
And it becomes a list of subcontractors that allow them to work cohesively together with a proactive plan to make sure your building is one, properly maintained, but two, ready if disaster strikes.
Okay, good. And so we're thinking about really this in terms of not just um, not just air or water, but really in terms of absenteeism, health, right? Behavioral mitigation and cognitive performance, right? Students doing well, good academic outcomes. Dr. Alvarez, kind of from the teacher perspective, one thing that you would like for every superintendent to do tomorrow on this issue?
I think um, it's more so of a lasting statement for
Okay, sure.
superintendents, right?
Yeah.
If students aren't in school, they're not learning, right? So we know that 71% of our chronically absent students are miss school due to health related issues, right? So when we're thinking about that, we have to remember that absenteeism correlates strongly with low academic performance. And so as a superintendent, these are some things that you really need to think about. If our buildings are causing our students to have additional or more health issues, then it's our job to do something to alleviate that, to ensure that our students are in our classrooms getting everything that they need so that they can be successful academically. And so for me, that would be the most important takeaway from this conversation is, it does impact our academic performance as a whole.
I really appreciate that. Thank you. Always bringing it back to the kids and what is best for them, for sure. I think the encouraging reality of kind of what we've talked about today is that districts don't need to have unlimited budgets to make meaningful improvements. Some of it is as simple as regular maintenance, batteries and switches, right? Small fixes, and really good awareness of what these issues are and how to avoid them on the front end. Knowing that preventative practices can really go a long way towards creating healthier learning environments for both students and staff. So I wanted to thank you guys for joining us today on this Learn webinar. These webinars are posted and available on demand under the resources tab of the Learn website. Again, golearntoday.org. They remain there for at least a year to allow district leaders to access the information when they need it on their own schedules. Thank you very much, guys, for joining us and for such a great conversation.